very much, and I'll try and make up a little bit of time. So hold on tight, colleagues, I'll go quite fast. I think I've got maybe 5 slides that just give a broad overview, and then in the subsequent presentations on raw data, there'll be a deep dive into a couple of topics. So if we go to the next slide. So you've seen this slide many times before. It's our current work plan, 2021 to 2023. And you'll remember that the different work streams, or which are sort of rainbow coloured, relate to the priority recommendations from the Big Data Task Force, as published in its report of January 2020. And they relate to Darwin EU, data quality, data discoverability, skills, network processes, so regulatory processes, the capability to analyse, expert advice, governance, data governance, international initiatives, stakeholder liaison, and vet recommendations. I think the headline is that we remain on track to deliver that work plan, despite the fact that it's extensive in terms of its breadth, and some of the individual projects are really quite large, but we're on track. Next slide, please. A couple of specifics, just because there's been progress in the last couple of months since your last meeting. So on data quality, which every time we talk to stakeholders, whichever stakeholder group they might be, they tell us that data quality is critical, particularly with respect to real-world data. We had a workshop on the 7th of April, a multi-stakeholder workshop, to share progress on building a European medicines regulatory network data quality framework, and to get feedback from different stakeholders, both from a stakeholder group perspective, but also from an expert perspective. And that was, I think, overall very successful, and a workshop report will be published, and we are aiming to have a written consultation in the 3rd quarter, so over the coming months, on a high-level data quality framework for data used in regulatory decision-making. In the area of discoverability, or to use the more current terminology, it would be findability, that's the F of FAIR. How can we find particularly real-world data in the European Union? The key progress here is that in almost certainly next week, we will be publishing for the first time ever a real-world metadata list. So the concept of metadata is data that describe data, if you like. And the key point about having an agreed metadata list for the European Medicines Regulatory Network is that it allows us to collect the same data set describing different databases, if you like. And then we can use those data, that core set of metadata on the different databases to populate a catalogue, so a signposting catalogue. And that is going to be one of the key tools to enable stakeholders, medicines regulators, industry, patient groups, healthcare professional groups to identify, find, and potentially access the most suitable real-world data sources for their research needs. It'll also help us interpret studies, because if we know a study that's published in the Lancet, for example, has been done using database X, we can look in the catalogue at the characteristics of database X in some detail using these metadata. So really important progress. We're hopefully in the next couple of weeks we'll publish that list. And we remain on target to deliver a catalogue. Obviously, it won't have every single data set in the European Union in its first iteration, but a core set of databases. And my best guess would be that that catalogue will go live in the 1st quarter next year. In terms of EU network skills, a highlight I just want to emphasize for you is that we have just closed a public open tender for service providers to basically be providers of training material in the regulatory network. And the training material was in 3-4 areas: pharmacoepidemiology and real-world evidence, biostatistics, particularly as applied to clinical trials, data science, so very broad, but including things like advanced analytics, artificial intelligence, and so on, and then some aspects on clinical trials. So not a comprehensive clinical trials curriculum, because we have quite a lot of training materials already, but certain gaps that we had identified on clinical trials. Once the responses to the tender will be evaluated over the coming weeks and months, and we would anticipate that by the autumn, late autumn, we will have signed framework contracts with some of the service providers. We can start having training material made available to the European Regulatory Network starting early 2023. The audience on this call will or may well have been interested in participating in that open tender. And I just point out it closed 2 days ago. The last thing I just wanted to mention, because it's a change, is that we identified that the Big Data Steering Group has broad stakeholder representation. So we've got patients, we've got healthcare professionals, we have HTA and payers, we've got member state, etc. But we had no industry voice. While industry has a very loud voice in many aspects of medicines regulation, they had no voice in this particular forum. So what we've decided, rather than giving industry a seat in the Big Data Steering Group, we've decided that the Big Data Steering Group should have a touch point with the industry told them the data securities were. And we'll do that. We'll repeat that probably every 6 months or so going forward. Let's go to the next slide. So I won't go into detail here, except to say that we're in the process of revising our work plan. This is the Big Data Steering Group work plan. So at the moment we have 2021 to 2023. We're looking for from now till 2025 work plan. And the inputs have included the Learnings Initiative workshop last autumn, which was very much about real world evidence, but also the multi-stakeholder platform meeting we had last December, where patients and healthcare professionals were well represented and presented on the different priority actions. So I think we have had really good input, rich input, and we would aim to adopt a revised work plan in June and then make it public probably in July. And we will, of course, share it with you through Natalie and Ivana and the colleagues who support patients and consumers and the healthcare professional working parties. Let's go to the next slide. Just to say, in terms of more information, we've got a dedicated web page, and these are hypertext links if you want to click on the slides. We've started a big data highlight. The second issue was just put on our website. Really nice article from Marilina Vrana. Thank you, Marilina, if you're on the call today, on insights into big data and real world data from a patient perspective. So I just wanted to highlight that to you. If you will click one more time, I think it's my last slide. Yeah, so I think we are making steady progress in our vision, our goal to transform to data-driven medicines regulation in line with the network strategy to 2025. We believe it's absolutely key. The concept the terminology you often use is co-creation. So we want to have patients and healthcare professionals in the discussion at the beginning, the middle, and the end, if you like. And that's why we are making sure we have multi-stakeholder workshops, that we come here, but also that we've got patients and healthcare professionals on the Big Data Steering Group and also the Darwin EU Advisory Board. And I've mentioned some recent contributions, some recent milestones, which will be further elaborated when we have the raw data from clinical trials presentation and the Darwin EU presentation. I think I'll stop there, Juan,